So that's for the live stream of people.
I don't even remember what my favorite class was. It really wasn't that long ago, but like.
Right, I don't remember what mine is.
Right, no idea.
And it was. So we can give them all a few more minutes. I will use the restroom.
Okay. Oh, it's on there. Cool. Why am I so bad at this? Play. Cool. I don't know why I'm so bad at using these things. Ooh. Do what?
I said I am too.
Like, I think with this job, it's my first job. I actually learned how to use like a Google Drive. When I did this with his other class, I brought a cat, so I apologize that I did not bring an animal with me today. It was supposed to rain and everything, and I just wasn't sure, and I didn't feel like carrying a big old cat crate. We're trying to tote along a dog. So I'm like, just gonna miss it this time.
Did you miss the cat last week?
Yeah.
That's what I was just telling her. I was like, sorry, I didn't bring a cat today. I was off yesterday, and so the vet was like, I didn't look far enough in the schedule. I thought you were going on Wednesday. And I was like, it's also totally fine because I thought it was supposed to start raining soon.
Right, yes.
And I just feel like carrying around a cat
in
the rain or a dog who's going to get my car all muddy. Even though it's kind of what my car does, it gets muddy.
Yeah, it's it's hard to do. I was going to look at the rain because that would be. It does say severe thunderstorms.
Yeah, it's just like rain like around 1 or something.
I see rain is expected to start in 38 minutes.
Yeah. See, I would.
It gives you. It's so weird how we never got specific times in the past.
You just kind of waited and watched.
Yeah. But that is crazy because I do want to try to run outdoors. So maybe is it going to rain bad?
I have no idea. I think it's only supposed to rain for a little bit too. It's like it's not supposed to rain all afternoon.
Oh, you're right. 3 and 4, and then it's windy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It is getting a little windy now, though. At least on my drive here it was.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we at least have some live, and if there's questions, I'll tell you. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Let me get started.
Yeah, sure.
Well, so my name is Christina. I am a social worker. I'm a licensed social worker, and right now I do veterinary social work. Have either of you heard of veterinary social work? Neither did I, which is why I'm here. So we're soon to be starting like a social work internship program for veterinary social work. Hopefully it'll be next year for you guys, like next semester, in the fall. So I never heard about veterinary social work when I was going through my master's program. I have my undergrad in psychology and my master's in social work. And so I just thought it was really important to, before we just start a program, to talk to schools and social work groups about what the heck this stuff is. So I started with the Humane Society of Greater Dayton in September. Before that, I did a lot of crisis stuff. I did a lot of crisis work with law enforcement. advocate at the prosecutor's office. I've done just about everything, it feels like, in social work. Private practice, inpatient, community mental health, homeless outreach, you name it. So I landed in veterinary social work after realizing like I really love working with animals a whole lot, and I still have my social work degree and want to help people. So veterinary social work, it's really looking at that intersection of that human and animal bonds, that human and animal interaction. And it occurs at kind of like all levels of the social work practice. So I'm not a therapist for animals. When I say I do veterinary social work, people are like, so do you do like therapy for animals? I was like, I don't even.
It's okay.
I don't even know how that works. Like, yes, animals can get like anxiety, but like that's not a thing. So no, I work with the people who have pets. I'm considered the One Health program manager at the Humane Society, and so the One Health is really that entire framework of people, animals, and the environment, and making sure that we have healthy people, so we have healthy animals, and we have healthy environments, and how they all kind of link together. And then that human-animal interaction is a very big thing in veterinary social work. Just looking at how animals positively impact people, lower blood pressure, lower heart rates, all those happy juices flowing that you get from hanging out with animals. Sorry, I could not provide one to you today. So just some of the things that I do at the Humane Society, one of the big pieces that I do is this client advocacy piece. So at the Humane Society, we have a hospital, so we have the veterinary clinic, we have the shelter where we have dogs and cats and guinea pigs and all of the things. And then we have like our humane agents, so the cruelty and neglect department. I work across all areas of that, but primarily I'm over in the vet office because that's where we see a lot of our clients come in. And I manage a caseload of clients who come in for vet services, and they might need access to other community resources, whether that's pet food pantries, mental health resources, if they're experiencing homelessness or housing instability, connecting them with our folks in the community who help with housing. So you name it, I try to keep like comprehensive resource guides and everything to help direct people in the appropriate places. So maintaining like comprehensive resource guide and documentation. You didn't document it, it didn't happen. So for ethical standards, of course, being a social worker, I keep that. And then for grant opportunities, it's really important because veterinary social work is kind of a very niche field. So implementing it into veterinary practices and shelters and everything, which are typically nonprofits and everything, having that extra kind of person, which is really helpful, but a lot of times it's going to be grant funded. My program started out as a grant, and we're always looking for other ways to like fund the program and everything. So having that detailed documentation is always really important. And then we do have a program, our Safe Pets program, for people who are actively fleeing domestic violence situations. And with that, I help coordinate with our shelter. So if somebody's fleeing domestic violence and they have a pet and they can't take their pet with them at that time, we bring it into our shelter. They do not surrender it or relinquish any rights, but we care for it until they can get their pet back when they're safe. There's a really, really large link between people violence and animal violence. And child abuse and animal abuse. So these programs, these Safe Pets programs and everything, if somebody's fleeing and they know they have a place for their pet, then they are much more inclined to seek out shelter to leave that abusive relationship. Another really big part of what I do is grief counseling. This is a very not fun part, unfortunately, but we euthanize animals when they come in, whether they're sick, whether they're old. When it's medically necessary, we do euthanasia. So a part of what I do is kind of just being with people for that grief process. Whether it's just sitting in there and talking. I know last week we had a really hard euthanasia a little boy was there with his mom. He was 11, and this was the first time he experienced anything like this. And to sit with him and kind of talk to him about the process, but also just talk to him about other things in general. Super duper smart kid, but just kind of distracting him a little bit, getting him talking to where he wasn't just solely focused on his pet who was going to not be with him anymore. So assisting those clients with the decision-making process. Sometimes people are really ambivalent about wanting to go through the process. So going over end-of-life decision-making, on what that looks like with them to kind of help them feel better about whatever decision they're going to make. So this is a really, really large part of what we do. When one of our clients experience a loss of their pet, we always send them like cards, sympathy cards, and we do like nose prints and paw prints and stuff if they want. So it was somebody's big old dog to get those nice clear nose prints and paw prints. So collaborating with humane officers. This is my favorite boy, Moto. He got adopted a couple weeks ago, and I'm super duper happy about it. I just saw his his got adopted thing, and he was like sitting on the couch with his human siblings, and it made me really happy. But our humane officer, they investigate cruelty and neglect cases. So where I come in, let's say there's like a hoarding case, there's mental health component there, helping them get access to appropriate services, to prevent kind of those reoffenses, to make sure their animals are healthy in their home. Sometimes it might not be a big hoarding case, but they might have an animal who is sick or injured. They don't take care of it because they can't afford vet care and they don't know of the low cost resources. So maybe helping them get connected to vet care so their animals can be healthy. So that is what I do with the humane officer. So those are always good days. Moto, we picked up like my first day riding with the humane agent. He was just a stray. Usually we don't pick up strays, but the sheriff's department had him. And so we went over and picked him up. And he's a really good dog. I'm happy for him. Mental health support. So veterinary social work is not only kind of responsible for the clients coming into the shelter to the vet office, but really also helping our staff. And I don't provide therapy or anything to our staff. There are different veterinary social work programs that their purpose is more of that staff support, where mine is more client focused. But I still do kind of some passive things for mental health support. This is a little wellness wall that I created for our staff. They have access to some resources, some self-care stuff, some coping skills. I actually had a student doing observation hours with me this past semester, and she really helped do the wall. I know it's really hard to see the writing, but she had like really fun handwriting, and she's not a student with me anymore, and now I'm sad because I need to find somebody else who has really good handwriting. Yeah, she does. She has really, really great handwriting. She's really, really crafty. So I told she really wants to continue volunteering at the Humane Society because she had previously, and I was like, you have to volunteer once a week so you can come over here and update the wall for me. So I also do like different staff trainings, de-escalation, conflict resolution stuff, whether that's external or is that kind of internal conflict that we all kind of deal with when we work with people. And then again, that de-escalation, we work with people who are really struggling a lot of the time, who are having a hard time getting their needs met, who are low income and money stresses people out. And so sometimes we get people who are escalated and things like that. So how can our staff better handle those situations and de-escalate somebody? I do trainings on those. And then the last piece here that I do and that veterinary social work does is this program development piece. So the veterinary social work program at the Humane Society is pretty new. It's a little over a year old. I've only been in it since September, but really like working on growing the program. is super important. So we can have like that really strong piece in the community of like, this is where we can get access to care for our people and our pets. Access to care is like a really big term in the veterinary world, and it means kind of how it sounds. People come to us because and get that care. They have that access because we're lower cost, we're lower barriers, so people don't have to kind of pay as much or jump through so many hoops and things like that. They know that they can come to us, and we will help them with whatever their situation is. And if we can't help, we are super supportive in getting them to the people who can help. So this program development, it's really important. I've noticed to connect with other veterinary social workers. Oftentimes you are quite on an island. I'm the only social worker where I work. When I was in the police department, I was the only social worker where I worked. And so it's super duper important to create that network so you have other people who you can call, who you can rely on, who you can bounce ideas off, who know what you're talking about, and who also kind of have those same like social work values and ethics and viewpoints. Community outreach, this picture here, that's Andy there, and Sage, they work with our PATH team, which is our homeless outreach team. We got a whole bunch of blanket donations this winter for our dogs. We could not keep up with the amount of donated blankets we got. Our street outreach teams didn't get any. So a lot of that is like redistributing goods. And so they came and picked up like 3 or 4 van loads in like their cargo van of blankets throughout the winter. So much so where like they're like, please stop giving us blankets. I'm like, but can you please take more because we don't have any room for them. So partnering with people in the community when we can. We have programs like to help people get vaccinations for their dogs or cats at no cost, for if they need it for housing, needed to help get into shelter. Our shelters do kind of take people and their pets if they kind of hit certain criteria, and vaccinations are one of those. So we want to do what we can to make sure that people are not living on the streets, so they have access to getting into shelter. And then again, developing programs to address any gaps in services. Pet food pantries is a big one. We often have people coming in needing dog or cat food. Sometimes we have it just based on donations. We don't have an actual pantry, which is one of those programs that I really want to create because while there are pantries, sometimes it's hard for people to get to them based on where they live and different things like that. But there is that gap there. So that is kind of a very overview of veterinary social work, and more specifically kind of what I do at the Humane Society and kind of all those pieces and parts. This is me. These are my friends, my family, my furry babies. I got Porter, who he hurt his neck last week. We were up from like 2 a.m. on when he was just yelping and crying and scared me so bad. I was so worried because he's kind of an old man, but it turns out he just hurt his neck really bad. I'm like, okay, I thought you were dying and you strained your neck. So he is on steroids and pain meds and muscle relaxers, and he's still, you would think, but he still is like going. I'm like, dude, just relax. And then his partner in crime, Nola, she's younger, but Porter is her emotional support dog. And this is our newest. He's our bearded dragon, who I actually adopted from the Humane Society 2 months ago. He's in his first shed right now, and I've never had a reptile. I'm like so intrigued. I'm like, oh my gosh, this part is shedding and that part is shedding, and he doesn't like me, but I really like him. And that's my bird Zazu. She's really fun. She's a sun conure, and she's really awesome. She's basically like the bird version of a dog.
Does she talk to
She doesn't say words,
okay,
but like she will scream when you first get home, and she makes all kinds of like little chirps and sounds. Like you can definitely tell like when she's really happy or like wanting to cuddle. She's really, really sassy, and she likes to sleep on you, which is weird. Like I said, like she is literally the bird version of a dog. This weekend, like we stayed up late, like watching movies, and she just slept like under the blanket, like on my stomach for probably 3 hours. So, but yeah, does anybody have any questions? It's a whole lot less fun this time since I don't have a cat with me.
The cat did definitely stretch things out. Did anybody know you do veterinary social work? Like even maybe for internships going up. So.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a location in Columbus?
So we don't. So I'm at the Humane Society of Greater Dayton, but Columbus does have a veterinary social work program. They have the program at like one of the veterinary hospitals, and they also have a like resource program. So I forget what it is called. But where they do like a big pet food pantry and stuff like that. So they have like 2 or 3 veterinary social workers, and they do interns there as well.
Do they really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they connect with OSU or big schools and graduate school students.
Yeah.
And like, do they? Any of them gotten to the billable hours yet for clients? You think? Or
No idea.
does Cincinnati have one?
I have no idea if Cincinnati has one, but I know
Okay.
there is a shelter
Mm-hmm.
in Cincinnati that has like a really great co-sheltering program. So animals and people,
Yeah.
especially they also have a really great program to shelter, like a safe pets program to shelter animals while people go for treatment. So that's down in Cincinnati. I would imagine that they also have social workers. Pretty sure they have social workers on staff in Cincinnati. So yeah, it is definitely like a growing field. Like I said, when I first started, I did not hear about it. It wasn't until like 3 years ago that I even heard about veterinary social work. And then when I did, I was like, I need to do that.
What type of grants support you all, and what could because we could apply to what's called a capacity building grant once a year in August. Like what grants and what resources then? Like what do you write up into the grants? What do you ask for? What food, what buildings, well they don't let you do buildings on CPG. So like what items and articles and maybe a course. So for horticulture therapy, we added 3 courses.
Mm-hmm.
We paid extra counselors over there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a research component too. So like pre and post with Dr. Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I do know our police station has a dog, and I think that was grant funded. What if we ever did a CBG? It would probably be a year and a half from now. If we're writing one for this August, so maybe in a year and a half in August. What could we write to detail?
I am not the grants guru.
Right.
I know. So for the first grant that we had, it was like a smaller. I don't want to say the amount wasn't smaller, but the organization was like a local organization that helped with like startup programs, like community programs. So a lot of like what we look at or that I track in mine are like the services we're providing. So those community referrals that I'm making.
Okay.
Obviously the amount of clients we receive, the amount of people who are keeping their pets rather than surrendering them to the shelter is a big one. And like that cruelty and neglect piece. I know I just sent information for a grant that looked at kind of a couple pillars of like community outreach, if you will, but it was like health, safety, but like our crisis program is a really big one. So like the Safe Pets, it is a much smaller program right now, but like building that program is really kind of one of those important needs because we constantly get people who are calling to see if we have any resources to shelter their pets while they seek treatment, while they get housed and things like that. I don't know if that at all answers your question.
No, I also want to see how the write-up comes for ideas for grants, because it could be connecting it with our either local homeless shelter and domestic violence shelter. So like you said, cohabitate pets and humans, having a social worker navigate so that they keep the pets like with food and a pet food pantry. and then also maybe medical stuff
Mhm.
too.
I think that's such a really, really high need because like there are so many, I get a lot of calls for people like, I need to go to the hospital because X, Y, and Z is happening, but I have a dog and I can't, I don't have anybody to watch my dog. Is there, like, can you take my dog
Yeah,
so I can go to
yeah.
the hospital? I'm like, we can't. We don't have that capacity.
Like you can't just take it temporarily and just like.
And board it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then that could be
Yeah.
one thing
Mhm.
along with, I do know with a domestic violence situation, you want to keep a pet, or with homeless situations, and they'll be like, no dogs here. So then they just sleep out under the bridge because they're not giving up their dog.
Absolutely. And they have the right to keep their dog and cat.
Yeah.
A lot of the people, a lot of the times there's this like, a lot of this is like breaking down stigma too, which is what we do in this field. There is so much like stigma associated with like somebody who's experiencing homelessness and having a dog with them. I'm like, well, they can't take care of themselves. They shouldn't have a dog. Okay, well, this dog might be the only person or the only thing that is kind to them, showing them any compassion or care. The only, like, maybe it's the only thing keeping them alive. Because they have a reason to live, to care for this pet. Just because somebody's like not sheltered doesn't mean that they don't deserve their pet. But co-sheltering programs, I would love if our shelters in Dayton had a better co-sheltering program because it is really, really important. I work with our homeless outreach team often. I do assessments for them, and so I talk to a lot of our folks, and they have pets, and I'm like, I'm not going to the shelter, and I can't. Or I have 2 cats, and I can only take one of them with me. So now what? So yeah, that co-sheltering piece is really, really high needs. That one, and then we get a lot of calls regarding like pet food. Is another really big one.
And that would lower the incidence of getting rid of the dog because you can't feed it or whatever the animal is.
Yeah.
Because any of you guys had pet therapy before? Seen pet therapy?
I've seen it around the school.
Yeah.
Like somebody NPCs had a dog.
Is he still all scared?
No, he's not. He's not like the person or the dog.
The dog, the other students last week said that dog's scared of everybody.
Nah, he should be out. He'd be ready to run.
Okay.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, but I see somebody else, like my friend, she has a cat. She go to UC.
Yeah.
Like they have a cat in their dorm.
They're allowed to?
Yeah, they just allowed to. I'm like.
That's what you mentioned last week. What's
Yeah,
that?
so with we get a lot of people asking and talking and stuff about ESAs, which are emotional support animals, and service animals. And ESA is not a service animal. Technically it can be, but they're separate things.
Yeah.
A service animal is a task-trained animal, so they are trained to perform a task such as retrieving your medication, alerting you to seizures, or noticing if you're diabetic, if your sugar is high or low. It can help with mental health. So like,
calm you down.
yeah, if you have like maybe PTSD and like something loud goes off and that is a trigger for you, a dog can note that and react and act accordingly. But it is a task trained dog, and they have open access accommodations, so they can go anywhere with you, as long as they are with you. They have to be with you at all times, and they can't be destroying anything. A service or an ESA, so an emotional support animal, that is a housing accommodation only. It is an ADA compliant accommodation under the Fair Housing Act. So it is literally only for housing. It does not have open space access, so it can't go with you to the grocery store. It can't go with you to class, to those things. It is like needing rails in your bathroom. It is a housing accommodation only, and that's something that your provider, so if you see a therapist, or even if your primary care provider provides you like psych meds, any type of like mental health medication, and is able to like attest to the fact that this animal helps you manage your anxiety, they can write like an ESA letter, and you submit that to your housing. But it is only for housing accommodations, and that housing accommodation is anything that falls under the Fair Housing Act.
So the dorms would be good. Other apartments, they're allowed to use the ESA, but not the.
Shelters can too, homeless shelters.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. They can. They have to have it. I know our shelter, they require people to have an ESA letter. If it's a dog, it has to be muzzled at all times. Which really isn't quite good for the dog.
Right.
And if it's a cat, it has to be crated and it has to be updated on all of its vaccinations.
So have you written one of those for somebody at the shelter?
Our shelters are in a bit of transition right
Okay.
now in Dayton. So they were almost ready to close our men's shelter completely.
Really?
Yeah. Which is really bad because
Yeah.
it's always at capacity.
Right.
Luckily another provider came in, so Homeful came in and is taking over the men's shelter. But there is a lot of different things happening within our shelters right now. So hopefully when that settles, that is one of my program development goals is to connect with our men's, women's shelter and domestic violence shelter to work with them a little bit on creating better systems for co-sheltering with animals.
And who lives the closest to Dayton?
I live in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Oh, you live in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
And you come all the way here?
Yeah.
That's such a long
Do you
drive.
commute or do you
commute?
live in the dorms?
Huh?
Do you live in the dorms up here or do you commute up from Cincinnati every day?
I live here.
Oh, okay. I thought you commuted. I was like, whew,
I
that
did
is a
for 5 years.
drive.
It basically just feel like I've been commuting
Right.
more than living.
Okay.
I live here though, but
I did for 5 years, hour and 11 minutes every day, both ways. So 2 hours and 20
I don't like driving.
Where were you
The
at?
west side of Cincinnati.
Never mind. That makes
You
sense.
said west side?
The west side.
Yeah.
I would feel like
What's that?
Like Coleraine.
Oh yeah.
I went to school at UC, so that's what I didn't even like driving from Cincinnati to Hamilton
Right.
when I lived in Cincinnati and worked in the city of Hamilton. I'm like, this drive sucks. It was only 30 minutes.
What part of Cincy are you from?
Like Kaywood.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like those local schools there too, like Schroeder or
Yeah, close by Clark Montessori.
What high school
Yep.
did you go to?
Yeah, what high school
Clark Montessori.
Yeah. Wait, isn't that in Hyde Park?
Yeah.
That's a fancy
Okay.
one, right? They had like bees and I don't know, a Montessori high school.
Yeah.
It's a Montessori high school.
Like my school from Clark Montessori, maybe 15 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
Like Kenwood.
Oh. Okay. It's a fancy little area right there.
I used to kind of live in the Hyde Park, Oakwood area before I moved to Dayton. So,
Wow.
it's a good spot. I miss Cincinnati.
Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
I know you brought up Hamilton. Is there any services like this in Hamilton? Because that's where I'm from.
Okay. So Animal Friends is the primary, essentially the Humane Society in Hamilton. So it's right by transitional living, Fairfield Road area. I used to work at transitional living, so that's why I know. I don't know that they currently have a program, but I know that they are starting to grow some different programs there. So I'm not sure if that is something that's going to be coming along or not. But they are doing some different things there at Animal Friends to kind of grow their programming.
Any other questions? You guys won't do your internships until when do you think? You're all freshmen and sophomores?
I'm a junior.
Okay, so you could do yours next year.
Probably next spring semester because I'll still be a junior fall semester.
Okay, yeah, so you could do either one. And then, I would like to think of ideas for grants to submit it for a CBG, maybe mimic the horticulture therapy grant. I'll try to send that to you so you can see what we had to do, and then it would be not 18 months, but is that 12 plus 4, 16 months from now, start writing for the next one. They only let one of us be PI, so we kind of rotate as faculty members. We each rotate who's the PI on each grant. You get 3 years of a grant, and Dr. Hunt is doing amazing things with horticulture therapy. So
That's super cool.
I could
That's
see
really
the
interesting.
animal
Yeah.
at least adding the course, having the internship.
Mhm.
They usually have and it's capacity built, so you got to build the capacity up. Maybe it would be, gosh, do you guys know who keeps the police dog? Does it just like stay at the cop station?
They typically have a handler.
Yeah.
So it would
Like
be
take
one
them home.
officer who would have
Gosh,
the dog.
how do they do that then? I guess they're just the one. They're the like. What if they quit?
So
You know what I mean? What if they got fired or something? I'm just
different. So departments do things different, and it like kind of like depends on how you get the canine.
right.
But a lot of the times, like especially with like police canines who are like drug seeking or things like that, typically they're trained to a handler, and if
Okay.
something happens to that handler, they are retired. The dog retires essentially. So it stays
Okay.
with that handler
Right.
because just depending on the dog and everything, it can be really hard to like retrain it to another handler.
Yeah.
Not to say that it doesn't happen, because they're like different departments have different policies and get dogs different ways and things like that. But in my experience, typically they stay with their handler. If a dog retires, like my police department, Zorro was our canine, and he retired just because he was an old guy.
Uh-huh.
He was a Belgian Malinois, and I loved him dearly. But yeah, he retired, and so he just lived out the rest of his life at his handler's home.
And that's why
his
like
owner.
the military ones get like their own dog tags.
Yeah.
I guess little dog tags, and then like do they get stars and everything too? Like purple stars?
They
and
can,
because
like
they're
enter the
actual
line of duty. Things
right.
like
They're
that.
like an actual I don't even know what to call it. They're a Marine?
Yeah.
Would they be a Marine?
They would essentially be whatever. So like a police dog is, and it's an officer
Wow.
essentially.
Okay.
Like it's a canine officer.
Oh,
So
okay.
he has a little badge. They have little badges, and they
Yeah.
all of the good stuff. So
Well, they've shown recent where they have all this gear on their head and they're coming down off a helicopter and they just like go and just like take the dude down.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's new training or like better
mhm.
technology they have to. What is the gear on their head that they all wear? Have you seen any of
I
that?
have seen it.
Like what
It's
the heck?
probably just
Cameras,
like
probably?
cameras maybe, or just like protective gear for them.
And now they have like,
they have
the-
like doggy like Kevlar vests and all of that good stuff and
Oh.
everything too, like bulletproof vests for 'em.
okay. And then they have the cat Batman one. with-
Yeah. Some are a little extreme with it, and I think it's more silly things rather than actual real things that happen.
But at least,
So
as long as they can enjoy reality.
Yeah. It seems I've seen them put it on the cat and that just like it like looks up like it's Batman. Well, do you guys have any other questions, concerns?
I do have cards here with me. I
That
thought I
would be
forgot
perfect,
them.
actually.
So you guys can take them, and if anything, like if you have questions or you're interested in like programming, internship programming or anything for the future, you can reach out to me.
And you are good to go. I didn't have any other classes after this. So
Okay.
do you feel complete? I want to make sure like
Yeah.
I need to just
No, that's great.
relinquish.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Did
Are
anybody
you guys
else?
still taking internships for this summer?
Not for the summer. So we'll probably look at taking internships in the starting fall semester.
August.
Yeah, August.
Yeah.
So
How
weird.
does that work? Taking like internships during the fall semester, even
So-
though we're in school.
If you're specifically referring to the internship for social work, and it's 400 hours, Dr. Nikita Jackson helps set it up for you guys, and then you're supervised by a LISW, or a LSW, somebody who's been in the field and works, and then you do it one semester. So it's either fall or spring before you graduate. And if you're talking interns, a lot of times I have this question, they're like, sophomore year, I want to do an internship. That's on you and whatever place you choose. A lot of times, more often than not, Have any of you all found a paid internship yet? Because that's the usual question I'll get. Because I usually it's for experience or volunteering is kind of on their own time. Is that what you're asking about?
No, I was asking for like paid internships for like the fall semester.
Right. Correct.
So.
Right. But that's a good question. Is a lot of people are looking for a job, like an internship job that there would be funding. My experience in social work is I never got a paid internship.
Me neither.
Ever. And that's just kind of
That's
standard.
the social work.
That's just been how it has been. So we have worked on different grants that allow for funding for you guys to get those, and we've been successful the past 2 years. It just depends. Like it's all grant related, but in social work, some people do it they get their job first. Say you work at a chemical dependency counselor assistantship place. If you work there and get that CDCA, you could build Medicare and Medicaid for them. So you're making them money, therefore they pay you. That's the other trick to get like a paid internship. So you get it as a job before you do your internship. Ask Dr. Jackson, can I do my internship here? They ask you to do like a different thing for them. And then you get paid. So that's one of the loopholes. I don't know if people did that when you were
Oh yeah.
graduating. It's easier as a master intern, but you could do it as the CDCA only requires an associate's. That's why I mentioned that.
I had my CDCA.
Yep. And that might have been a way she got paid
Yeah.
to do whatever she was doing. Right.
I definitely did not get paid for it. So I had my CDCA when I was in undergrad.
Okay.
And then when I got to my master's, I was working community mental health. So I was doing like homeless outreach and court outreach for like mental health docket and stuff like that. And then my internships in my master's program, I wanted like the experience of something outside of my job. So I had my first one. It wasn't a chemical dependency place.
You do have to be at it to get that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think you have to be employed there to get
get
it, which is almost like a catch-22.
Yeah, it really is. But a lot of like the credits for classes in undergrad can kind of go right into that license. So which is really, really nice. So my first year of my master's program was at a chemical dependency, like co-occurring place, and I did like mental health assessments. And then my second one was with Cincinnati's homicide unit, doing victim advocacy, responding on calls.
That was a favorite internship for some reason for everybody at like NKU, and
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was
not paid either, right?
It was not
But
paid.
people loved it, like
Yeah, because the experience was very, very worth it, and especially if you're not going that kind of, I don't call it your typical social work route, but like if you're not wanting to do like your typical like therapy or like mental health things and everything, it was just like a very unique experience. It was very much like working kind of like that interdisciplinary stuff, and the supervisor Karen was phenomenal there. So it was a really, really great experience. Very hard, very trying. There was like grief counseling involved. You would respond like on scene to active like homicide and suicide scenes to support any loved ones who are there, so the police could do their job and kind of like walk them through next steps of like coroners and investigative processes and court processes, and when their loved one is going to be kind of like released, if you will, for any like services and stuff to be put together. So
the past few years, you may have missed it. We had the Ohio Great Minds funding, and Central State got $300,000. So juniors now were able to get onto that grant, and they got between $5,000 and $10,000 for their internship. The latest they can do it is fall of 2025.
Wait, they got a total like they like maybe like $5,000, $10,000.
$5,000 or $10,000, correct. So a lot of people went straight into their tuition bill. So that was a grant we had the past few years. I don't know if you're a sophomore or a junior or senior. What, you're a sophomore, junior,
Junior.
and then senior next year. Have you set up your internship with Dr. Jackson? Will you graduate spring and
I might graduate that fall, honestly.
like a year and a half left?
Mhm.
Okay. And only asking because, yes, that was the funding we had. If we have about 5 juniors that did get 5-10 grand, they're doing their internship at a high need internship in the fall. And they got that 5 or 10 grand this semester.
That's awesome.
Mostly to tuition. I don't know if you already have scholarships, so that made it tricky because if they already had a scholarship, then they'd like kick it out.
No.
So then we had to write up separate monies to pay them as like a student worker. It was tricky.
Make it
But
really
hopefully,
But if you already have scholarships for your tuition and that money comes through, wouldn't it just be like a refund check?
it should. That's my opinion. And we had a lot of extra paperwork we had to do to just get students their money because all of them had scholarships, and so now you've got it's called your expected contribution. Like, say it's $9,000 a semester. I don't know what you guys pay per semester, and if you got $9,000 in scholarships, so they're like, cool, you don't get any more. We're like, well, then why would you sign up and give a year after graduation
Right.
to get it? So we had one just leave the program. We had another. We eventually talked them into signing them up as a student worker, which is a ton more paperwork and training for us, and then they got paid. So yeah, unpaid internships was normal for me, but I was like 2020, or I should say 22001 for my master's degree. I don't know if you got Great Minds funding, if you graduated in 18 or 19.
No, we had so the way like UC did it was there was people or there were organizations that were partnered with the with UC's social work program, and that was like who you picked from.
Okay.
And out of that list, there was one place that had any type of stipend, and that was through the VA.
Oh yeah, the VA always had a stipend.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
And the one person who got that, he was a veteran who was going back to
Yes,
school,
that's-
so he
okay.
got it. He wanted to work at the VA, but even with that, I remember his internship stuff was so messed up because of like the stipend stuff, and then like they didn't have anybody to supervise him.
Gosh, 'cause they're all
So
counselors there probably.
yeah, he got started super duper late, and it was
That
like
sounds
really really messed up. So yeah.
Are you local?
No, I'm from Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. So I only asked because we also had another 100,000 behavioral health workforce expansion program. It didn't matter where you were from, with Indianapolis or whatnot. And 8 students got
Bless you.
10,000 tuition, 10,000 paid stipend, free laptop. That was last semester.
Wow.
So that was another grant that we wrote. That ended. It was Ohio surplus COVID funds. If you go to grad school locally at Miami University for the next few years, you would have paid internships working in a high need school. And I think that's also under the Behavioral Health Workforce Expansion Program. And if you did graduate fall of the year you said, in a year and a half, you would go to UC, has an additional $5 million for the Behavioral Health Workforce Expansion Program. You do your internship in a high need school, and they pay. It's like $5 million at Miami, $5 million at UC. And so they'll pay you, they'll give you room, board, tuition, and paid. So Miami, if it's spring within the next year, UC if you graduate fall, and you can do it either advanced standing. Do you want to go to graduate school? That's the next question. Because
I do, but
Okay.
I've been thinking about going to law school.
okay, which also there's plenty of joint MSW JDs,
Yeah.
and they say you're worth your weight in gold if you do both. Because
I wanted to do it.
social work law, yeah.
I wanted to
did-
do it so bad, but UC had just gotten rid of their program like a year or two
Did they?
prior.
What year
Yeah.
did they get rid of that?
It was I graduated in 2018 or 19
Okay.
with my
I didn't know they got rid of
master's.
that.
I think it was 20. Yeah, they got rid of it. It was like a couple years prior to me going into my master's program.
Okay.
I was so upset because I was like, dang it. Because in my undergrad, I was like, hey, Mom, I think I'm going to switch my major to like pre-law. And she was like,
Mhm.
no, you're not, Christina. You're
Right.
already like almost
You're a
finished
social
with your
worker.
junior year. Like you're not switching. I
Yeah.
was like, fine.
I did 2 years of law school, and I decided I did not want to do that. I had a major shoulder surgery right here, right in the middle of my second year of law school, And I decided then I was going to get my doctorate in counseling instead. But I have done half of law school. I have all the LSAT prep tests if you want it. I've got it is very competitive, I will say. That's what I liked about social work and counseling instead, is there's still competition, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's a different, like, who can help more, the most efficiently, the bestest, the fastest type of competition.
I mean, what I love about social work is like this field is so vast and so broad.
Mhm.
Like I've always loved animals. Like I have always been really, really terrible at math and science. I really like working with people. And like I never thought when I started in this field and when I got my degree and everything that I would be in a position where I was working with people and animals. Like
Yeah.
I never thought I would be doing
That's
veterinary
amazing.
social work. I never thought I would be doing like crisis work with law enforcement or like on the crisis. I'm also on the Ohio crisis response team. So like if there's a natural disaster or like disaster work, preparedness and readiness, like any of those like public health things and everything, like social work is there. And you can get a law degree and a social work degree all combined.
You really can.
So
You definitely can. Law school is a different, I did love the stuff I learned there. I
Mhm.
just decided to not, at the time, there was more unemployment than in any other field. And then social work, with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, we got so many job opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
Like we have almost job security the rest of our lives.
Mhm.
So
Might not always pay the best, so advocate for yourself.
yeah, you do.
For appropriate
Right.
salaries. I know the NASW is doing like a lot of like advocacy work obviously on behalf of social workers, but
Mhm.
they're even like advocating for those like paid internships and stuff like that, like policy wise.
What was your email again? It starts with,
One Health Advocate.
because I have the summary. Okay. And the video, if that's helpful. Do you do any more presentations coming up soon
I have
at schools?
next semester, since it's like the end of the semester and everything, next semester I will be doing one at Sinclair. Like they
Awesome.
do observation stuff for their students.
Awesome.
And then I should be back here again with
Yes, with Dr.
Dr.
Jackson. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
so.
Well, that's great. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me twice.
For sure. It's perfect timing and like a perfect class to have. Too,
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to listen to me. And if you have any questions, reach out. Looks
Yes.
like it's raining now.
I
so
know.
I'm glad I brought
Sorry.
my umbrella.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good. Well, cool.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
see
you.
See ya soon, maybe next semester.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, if you